I do want to talk about as we get going. This is week 6. I mean, after this week, we're halfway there. We are 6 weeks away from the 6th annual Carbo-Palooza. Our last night together that Monday, we're going to carb up a little bit. So we got that going for us. But you're almost halfway done with your training, and I want to talk about a few tips here relative to hill training and hill running. You noticed when we got in the parking lot last week, down at West, we started to go down that hill a little bit, and then when you go down, you always got to come up. One of the reasons we do that is that we're also going to follow the course a little bit. And I just want to offer a couple of pieces of advice. When you're running on hills, it's always effort that is greater than pace. So if you start out thinking, okay, I'm going to run 10-minute miles, and it's going to be a 31-minute 5K, and you get to a hill and you go, oh my goodness, I'm not running 10. I can't do 10. That's okay. You run with the same effort as you were running on level ground. When you get to the downhill, you don't sprint down it. You just increase the effort just a little bit. So your 9:30 on the downhill might be a 10:30 on the uphill, and it's going to all level out, okay? So worry about your effort over your actual speed or pace. When you're running downhill or uphill, posture-wise, just a slight forward lean. And the reason I say that is because one of the most difficult surfaces to run on, and one of the ones that can be most conducive to injuries, is running downhill. If you've ever run in a race that's all downhill, when you sign up, you go, that's awesome, yes. When you get to about halfway through the race, you go, oh my goodness, my knees are killing me. This is horrible. And a lot of it is because we start to sort of run like upright a little bit. We're trying to slow ourselves down a little bit, and we start getting out of our form, and we still want to maintain a little bit of a forward lean when you're going downhill. The more steep the hill, the more we have to consciously think about it, because before you know it, you're really leaning back, and your legs are just striking in just awful ways, and you're jamming your knees and all kinds of stuff. So be aware of that. Be in control. Okay, it is very tempting on the very first half mile of the ROCC 5K to feel like you are running with the wind, that you have unleashed your inner cheetah. It is a downhill sprint for the first half mile for as much as we have hills. It is downward. And you'll see some of that because, again, that's the course we're running in our training. And even when you get to that corner by the light, like we did last week, the steeper hill downhill is when you take that turn right and you go all the way back down to where the track is. And so you're running your first half mile and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is awesome. We'll talk about pace and everything, but just be in control, okay? Don't lose it. You can't win or have your best time on your first mile, but you can have your worst time because of your first mile, okay? So just stay in control on the hills. Run-walk strategy is something that is really encouraged. It's a very successful strategy. There are marathoners who employ a walk-run strategy the entire race and still finish with 3-hour plus marathons, less than 4 hours. And the key, if you're going to employ it on hills only, is to determine which one you want to do. There's 2 ways of employing run-walk on hills. One is you do the gradual run up the hill, slow back, same effort, and then you may walk the downhills. Okay, that's one way that people like to run. Runners like to run hills. The other way is reverse. You walk the uphills, and you make sure that you run ahead of your pace downhills, just a little bit in control. Okay, so that's an option too. So when you're running and you get to something, it's okay. If you want to say, I'm going to walk all the hills and run down, or I'm going to run up, but I'm going to walk the downhills, that's a perfect strategy. So think about that. And here's what I learned a long time ago, and I think it's great advice. Never make a decision on a hill, okay? We make bad decisions when we get in the middle of this hill and we still see the top of it and we decide, okay, that's it, I can't go any further. Or, you know what, I thought I was going to run a 45-minute 5K, forget that. Or, you know what, I'm going to walk the rest. Don't decide anything on a hill. Just be determined to get to the top of it or the bottom of it. Again, you're running downhill our first half mile, you're going to say, oh, you know what? I think I can run this 5K faster than I thought I could. Don't say that then. Don't decide that you're going to have a faster 5K on a downhill. All right, so that's a really good rule of thumb. Don't make any decisions on a hill. All right. Again, the reason I really want to share this is because on our ROCC 5K website, I always like to include the elevation chart. You'll find that on most races. And the elevation chart is just a way of kind of mapping the whole race, the whole 3.1 miles, and giving you an idea of where those hills might be. You have to, a little perspective on the ROCC 5K, because this is really bottoms out at about 790 feet and a high elevation of 830 feet. That's only about 40 feet. Sometimes elevation can vary between 200 or 300 feet. Okay, so that's perspective, but still, you guys see what I'm talking about in that first half mile plus? You're going to make your greatest downhill descent is on that first half mile plus, because that's 0.62 miles, and then you're going to hit the track for a level quarter mile. So you can feel really good about that first 3/4, but just know what's coming. That return to Louisville-Clemens Road has stopped a lot of those early speedsters in their tracks. That's why we are going to eventually, that's probably next week, we're going to go around the high school and let you experience that ascent back up to Louisville-Clemens Road. Okay? So then you see that we just do the rolling hills of Louisville-Clemens Road. We go down to Agape. I think that's kind of that last drop, and then we kind of just reverse it and come back. So that's a place to take a look. Go to the website. If you want to look at this closer, it's just the elevation chart for the ROCC 5K. But do that on any race that you're going to participate in. I'd highly encourage it, just to give you an idea of what to expect and plan for. Okay? Now, again, I just talked a second about the course itself. If you're not familiar with it, we do start out on the road, right out near the sign. Okay, kind of like we do. You're going to see we're practicing all this for a reason. We get half a lane. They stop the traffic for about the first 5 minutes. So we get to spread out and get ourselves down the road and inside the cones, but you're on the inner lane. We get to the track. We go around the track for a quarter mile. That's been a nice addition over the last 4 or 5 years that we didn't have in the first few. You'll see that, again, around the track, around the high school, and then all the way down to Agape Church and back to our downhill finish, which stay in control. We've had one injury in the virtual and the non-virtual, 10 years of the ROCC 5K. We've had one ambulance here, and it was an older gentleman, so I can say that now that I'm an older gentleman, that got a little bit ahead of himself, and his feet kind of got too, what would it be? He got too fast for his feet, maybe, and took a bloody spill. So it's real tempting. And if you're in control, it's great, but just be careful coming around that final descent because we end up about at the mailbox of the driveway. So it's a great finish heading toward the cross there on the building. You're going to hear me say this a lot as we get closer. Once you get past the entrance to the church heading toward Agape and turn around and come back, stay to your right. Stay to your right, stay to your right, stay to your right that whole way. The reason being is this is what you're facing. Okay? This works really well if those who are headed to Agape stay in the right-hand side of the lane, and those who turn around and come back toward the church stay in their right-hand side of the lane. It's beautiful. It's like dancing. It's rhythmic. It's a sight to see. But when runners in the right get over to the left and runners returning get over to their left, it's a mess. And we incorporated this after about the 3rd year because we do get a lot of elites. We get some of the faster runners in the area, and this was the only complaint we've had about the ROCC 5K in the early couple of years. It was really trying to make a more concerted effort to make sure everybody knew to stay in the right-hand lane. Because you can imagine, if you're not thinking about it and all of a sudden you're coming toward people, you have to jump off on the sidewalk and all that. But it's beautiful. The last 4 or 5 years has been beautiful, so thank you. Stay to your right, stay to your right, stay to your right. You'll hear me say that race morning over and over, and we'll have big signs out there. Okay? This week, they're the same 3 that you did the last 2 last week. Doing great. You're right there. This pattern should start becoming a little bit more comfortable for you. Someone asked me today if I'm still struggling sort of completing that 5-minute run. What should I do? My question back to this individual is I asked him if he felt like he was running at a good pace, and he said, oh yeah, I'm running it's pretty quick pace. Slow down. You can't run that pace for 5 minutes, so pull back. I bet you can run it a little slower for 5 minutes. You can't go too slow. I just want you to have that extra exertion for 5 minutes is the most important thing. So it could be in your pace. We're going to do that twice. We're going to go down the sidewalk toward the west. Be alert at Forest Oak. Peek over your left. I'll try to be there again. Watch out for one another, especially the junior runners coming out of the high school. Should be pretty clear, but just watch those exits and entrances. And then we get to the corner there. So we'll go clockwise. And then as we near that last interval, you'll see me saying, all right, walkers, you guys go ahead and head back. We'll time this out. Runners, all right, now you guys start heading back and then get back and cool down as you need to. Okay. And then the last thing I want to say before we go out tonight, some real exciting news, very generous sponsorship, who has also offered to match up to $2,500 of personal donations that we receive on the website or outside of it between April 1st and Raceday. So beginning April 1st, any extra donations or sponsorships that come in, this gentleman is going to match up to $2,500 again. All of that going to City Lights. So if you want to encourage others to race, if someone's looking for a way to help City Lights but doesn't want to be part of the run, that's a good way for them to be part of it. And then we've got some other sponsorships. Chick-fil-A this year is doing something different with us. When I say this initially, you're going to go, aw, they're not going to bring the biscuits to the race. They are going to give you a free sandwich if you take your bib down to Chick-fil-A. Yes! All right, so there you go. Registered, you've already got a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. So you take it down there. Of course, we'll have some other things at the end of the race as well, fruit and water and all that kind of stuff. But all right, any questions? We'll get back. I'll hand that out for the shirt sizes, and we're going to do part one of the March Madness. I'll explain why I'm as disappointed tonight as you are going to be, but I'm very excited about next week. That helped a lot, didn't it? All right, let's be safe. Let's have a great run. We'll start with our walk around the parking lot. All right, as we're getting a little bit stretched out in our water. Good work. Good job. That's a long, that's a good ways. Good work. I'm going to start in this corner, and this is the sheet that you can put your t-shirt size on the far right-hand column next to your name. The first grouping, if you're in green, means I've got your fee. If not, you're not in green, and just let me know. You can go ahead and put your size, but let me know about the fee when you get a chance. And if you're online, just let me know somehow. Maybe next week you can make it. I'm going to order these in we have 3 weeks of taking shirt sizes. So after that, that's like week 9, we'll order the shirts. I got the design right now. Andre's working on it. They're going to be the heather shirts, the soft heather shirts. I think they're going to be more of a grayish, a dark charcoal gray, and we're going to see how close we get to training and wisdom, and usually we have our key verse on the back. So that's that. We'll hand that right there. You guys got some pins? Oh, so let me ask this. That's a great question. I always say, I can't remember who makes them, but I always say that they seem to be pretty true to size on the soft ones. Now, the race shirts, they're usually about a half size too small, so go up. But on these heathers, they're usually pretty close. They might fit a little, like this is an extra large. I always wear extra large since like 8th grade. So, Hank, right? Yeah, me and Hank, yeah. So this sort of fits, I think, pretty comfortable on me. Anybody else who can remember the chasing your lions or running with horses? Good size, right? Yeah, so go with the true size. I will have some extras in case we need to exchange them out. So try to get close, and then we'll figure it out when we get them. Okay? Let's get going. Good. How's everybody feel? Yeah, pretty good, right? Okay, good. That's a good workout to jump up, and we've got the 2 5-minute runs and the 2 3 in between. So you've got the 16 minutes of running. That's getting us to that second plateau. So that's a good work. You got 2 more attempts at it, and then I think what's next week? Has anybody already looked ahead? Oh, yeah. Be in the moment. Don't look ahead. Be in the moment. Trust the plan. Okay, so Tonight, what I thought we were going to do is I wanted to talk a little bit more about Proverbs when it comes to wisdom. And I had an activity at the end. We talked about it, March Madness. And the materials I was waiting on were supposed to be in on Friday, and I just got the latest. They're coming in tomorrow. So we're going to do part one, but then part two happens next week. You don't want to miss it. And this is still going to work, all right? So we're still going to have March Madness in April, but all of my supplies will be in tomorrow and the next week. So they're still going to be with Proverbs. And so let me ask you, when I say the book of Proverbs or a proverb is, what do you say? Wisdom? Good. A saying. A saying. A poem? Okay. Generalizations? Okay. We'll fill that in by the time we're done here in a few minutes. Okay? The book of Proverbs. Let's talk about them a little more in depth. I do have one Bible on every table. Of course, you can grab on another if you want to follow this or just make note. You want to follow it at home just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. But Proverbs is broken up just like we find in most all books. And this is what I think is beautiful about Bible study is that often we just sort of overlook this whole literary outline of the book. And it makes so much more sense. It was much more intentional when we sort of consider what's going on in the book itself. And so when we look at Proverbs, we see that Proverbs 1 through 9, the very first 10 verses is the introduction. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Well, that's pretty clear. You know, there were probably several Solomons, but this one's pretty specific who we're talking about. The reason for writing this book, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, equity, to give prudence to the simple. Good. I like to hear that because that speaks to me. Knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning. On and on and on. Right? So this is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So here's the instruction, the introduction to Proverbs. We see that it is Solomon, who we also find in 1 Kings 3. Also in chapters 4, 29 through 33. This is the mantle that Solomon took upon himself. He was deemed this. He was ordained this. Everyone thought of him as this. But he's basically the father and keeper of this wisdom throughout the world, known throughout various areas. And he was the fountainhead of wisdom literature. Right? If you were in these days and you thought of King Solomon, you thought of a lot of things. Some good, some not so good. Some about his wealth, some about the way he squandered wealth, some about the way he obeyed God, some about the way he disobeyed God. But all of it, you would say, but you know what? He's the guy that has all that wisdom literature. Far and wide, right? You would know that about Solomon, and this is his introduction. We also find the purpose in the word he uses is the Hebrew word for wisdom, chachma. Everybody, together. Yeah, woo! Wipe off your tables before you leave. Chachma is really more than just being knowledgeable. Chachma in the Old Testament spoke of, like in the Exodus, when they said building the temple and the tabernacle, they said that they wanted the craftsmen and the artisans to do that in their chachma, in their abilities, in their skills, in their knowledge, in their art, in their craftsmanship. So this is sort of the idea of what gaining wisdom was, and then all aspects of who you were, your gifts, your talents, your knowledge, growing in those things. Then we move from Proverbs 1:10 to Proverbs 9:18, and you'll see some of the titles that people have given those passages, but really what's going on is it's a father to a son. He gives his son 10 speeches. from a father to a son. Chapter 2 begins, my son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom. Chapter 3, my son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. So there's sort of these 10 speeches a father would sit down to his son, just as we might do. A father to a son, a mother to a son, a mother to a daughter, but a parent to a child. How we want to sort of carry on and make sure that they are trained up in wisdom. All right, so that's the first 10 chapters, 9 chapters. We think of the book of Proverbs sometimes and we go, oh, they're those short little sayings throughout the whole book. Well, no, this is a third of the book and it's not even that yet. But it eventually will be. So within these first 9 chapters, we have this theme toward the end about the 4 poems that are given by the father to the son. And then the father telling the son about Lady Wisdom. If you guys remember that first week when we kind of get that overview of Solomon's books, talked about Lady Wisdom being the one that sort of portrayed or illustrated wisdom in this world. And so that's in there. Ultimately, over and over and over and over, every bit of wisdom literature in Scripture, Old Testament, New Testament, comes back to the idea that, son, true wisdom is living in the fear of the Lord. Rejecting foolishness. You see this contrast throughout all the wisdom books too. Many of these Proverbs, sometimes in Psalms, also in Lamentations, you see this contrast between this, do this, this, that's wise. Do this, that's pretty foolish. Almost everyone, you just kind of you see these back and forth. And so reject that foolishness is really the message to the son, the child. Fundamental wisdom literature or life advice. So if you wanted to read those first 9 chapters and just kind of say, hey, this is kind of interesting. I wonder if this is something I could share in my home, or I'd like to see myself. Solomon, through this illustration of a parent and a child, allow him just to speak to me. How would I receive it? Truth that is given in a way that it's projected through generations. This wasn't given as, okay, in these days, this is how you're wise, but eventually you'll get wise another way. Or in olden days, this is how they were wise. Today, it's much different. That's a message we need to hear. Right? That's a message we need to hear whenever we go into, particularly the Old Testament. We go into wisdom and we say, that doesn't really apply today. Yeah, Solomon's saying this is through all generations. Forever and forever, this is wisdom. This is advice. This is life advice, insight of God's people. And wisdom is not law or prophecy. He never presents it as, okay, what I am telling you is the same thing as God's law. And that's totally different with what we know of wisdom anyway. And what I'm telling you is not the same as God speaking prophecy through me. Okay? He's speaking life advice to his people. And I think that's a great lesson as well for all the literature, the wisdom books of Scripture. We look at them and we say, well, is that prophecy or law? No, it's wisdom. That's why in the Hebrew Bible, same books as our Bible for the Old Testament. The same 39 books they have in 24, but it's the same content. It's called the Tanakh. Then we get to the meat of Proverbs. Then we get to those things that we see on t-shirts and coffee mugs, and we always, might pull up and have as our life verses. Good stuff, but let's make sure we understand them. Hundreds of ancient Proverbs, okay? This is what we're seeing in these 20 chapters. Hundreds of the ancient Proverbs. Most of them Solomon will say he written. Some he'll say he got from so-and-so. But this would have been very, very common. They're about marriage. They're about debt. They're about justice, speech, family, poverty, work, generosity, alcohol. Almost everything you can think of, you can find a proverb to give you general life advice. That's pretty good, right? That's why I think it's so important that we at least are aware of them when we or someone we know says, hey, I've got a question. I don't know what to do. Let's see if there's a proverb about it. I've got a problem. I don't know what to do. Let's see if there's a proverb about it. My experience allows me to give you some life advice, particularly if I'm older than you, but it's not nearly as good as what the Proverbs are going to give you. So let's start there, okay? Again, maybe you hear one from some place and you go, okay, I'm going to return to that one. I'm going to kind of file that one away because I know I've needed to hear this before. I might need to hear it again. Or I know it's helped a lot of people. I'm just going to file that reference away. So that's what these Proverbs are, 10 through 29. They are probabilities. Sue said it well. They're generalizations. This is so important. This is where you're going to be able to help someone who misunderstands what Proverbs are. They are general rules. There are exceptions to rules. Not many, but generally follow the proverb, and this is what happens. They are not promises, and they're not formulas. Okay, they're not as easy as, all right, do this, do this, do this, I'm guaranteed this. Never intended to be that, and they certainly aren't. And so I want us to know that because sometimes we read them and we have doubts. We say, wait, I'm doing this. This isn't happening. The opposite of that happened. I thought the Bible told me truth. In Proverbs, it tells you truthful proverbs. General rules, probabilities, not formulas or promises. Two wonderful examples are Proverbs 10:27 and Proverbs 22:6. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. That does not mean that those who are righteous, godly, some of the most saintly and obedient followers of Jesus we know are going to live to 100, right? It doesn't mean that some of the more evil people in the world that deny Jesus are going to, not make 100. So we have to kind of come to grips that, you know what though? That's a good general rule though. If we follow in obedience, particularly all the instruction of how to live both as a follower, but also how to live proverbially, healthy, doing this and not being foolish, well, we're going to avoid a lot of things that might take our life a lot sooner. That's just a good proverb, right? I think we could say that. We could say that about a lot of things, right? I always use the example, and I'm not meaning to, I hope, not offend those who might smoke. But a proverb is, if you smoke, you probably won't live as long as someone who doesn't smoke. That's a proverb, statistically. Of course, we say that, and someone always knows of, hey, well, my Aunt Elsie lived to be 102. She smoked 6 packs a day for her entire life. That's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Exception to the proverb. And that's what these proverbs are, okay? Another one that is really critical because parents can really struggle with this one. And it's sort of one of those things that breaks our hearts if you're counseling or if you're a friend of or if you're a pastor of someone who comes to you and it says, all right, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. If you're taking that as a 100% promise every time, all the time, and your child is a prodigal, wow, that's hard to take. That's hard to take. And so that's the perfect time that we have to rely on the deal that, again, what these are general truths. Parents, our responsibility is to train up a child in the way he or she should go. That's our responsibility. That's our instruction. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time that moves them into something that is very good in their life. Some of the time, it just won't because they're responsible for their own choices and behaviors and decisions. And we just have to do what proverbially we're instructed, but also what we know to be true in a lot of cases, not every case. Does this make sense? Right? Do you know where I'm going with this one? Have you ever had someone struggle? Maybe you have, right? Okay. But proverb, general rule, right? And then the last 2 chapters, again, we get out of Proverbs as far as the sayings, and we have 2 poems. One is the poem of Agur, who is one who has applied the Proverbs. And a lot of us may be familiar with the final one, the poem Lemuel. First half is about leadership. The second half, everybody ever heard of the Proverbs 31 woman? Right, the woman of noble character. This is where that comes from, the poem of Lemuel. So that's the final chapter of Proverbs. It is Proverbs 31:31 is the last verse. And a lot of people like to use Proverbs as an ongoing devotional. A lot of people will say there's 31 chapters in Proverbs. You know what? I'm going to read a chapter a day, every month. One a day for the month, and then I'm going to start over and read them again. I'm just going to stay in the Proverbs, in the life advice. And so, with that, Proverbs, I like to think of it as a guide for living well in God's world. That's what Proverbs is intended to be, and how we can apply it as well. Make sense? Yep. So I'd encourage you, go through Proverbs. Maybe you start with the sort. April 1st is coming up. Start with Proverbs, a chapter a day through April, and then let us know what you think about it. Let us know if you find anything. All right. So, general overview of Proverbs. Okay. Oh, man, I was so excited. It's still going to be good next week. But March Madness. Here's what I want you to do. Right now, I want you to consider Proverbs and the idea of living well in God's world. Maybe you pass the Bible around, read some out, that chapters 10 through 29. Maybe you look on your phone. Maybe you know one. When you walk, your step will not be hampered, and if you run, you will not stumble. Actually, back up to 11. I have taught you, father to son. Remember, this is the passage of father to son, parent to child. I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the path of uprightness. When you walk, your step will not be hampered, and if you run, you will not stumble. That's our verses for this year's Run for God. So that's a good one, I think. So consider Proverbs and write your proverb. Keep your card with you. Think about your proverb through the week. I'd suggest think about it so much that it sort of becomes natural for you just to be able to share that without having your card. Memorize it. Think about it every day. And then bring it back with you next week. Okay? Keep looking. If you want to keep looking through Proverbs, I think these are just great. You know, there's these really profound sort of, again, spiritual and help us in our faith. We talk about, 27:17, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Just a great encouragement to hold each other accountable, motivate. But then there's also the very practical. You may have found some, but, 25:16, if you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have you fill and you vomit. How about that? Very insightful. Great advice. Mother always said you're going to get sick from eating so much candy. All right. So hold on to that because you're going to bring it next week and you're going to actually, we're going to try something where someone else is going to get yours and take it home. But it's going to be a really chaotic way of them getting it. March Madness. All right. Part 2 next week. All right. Keep thinking about the Proverbs. Lastly, before you go, a couple things you need to know. Talked about the shirt size. Register and pay if you haven't. If you did register again and you haven't got your devotional, this is the Tim Keller devotional on Proverbs. So it uses the Proverbs. Okay, you can register for the race now. You go to the ROCC 5K site on Run Sign Up. Generally, you can just say ROCC City Lights Ministry 5K, and that's just a search. It'll take you there. When you go through and you register, as you would, just normally, and it's going to show on there. If you do it by Thursday, it's going to show, all right, you now owe $20, and then you owe $2.19 processing, and then it's going to say enter a code, and you're going to enter in. Now, I say this not thinking anybody intentionally will do this, but I have had confusion before where this code has been passed around, and this really is one per registration. Okay, so if you registered, this is the code for you, because when you enter that code, that $22.19 is going to go to zero. Okay, if you wait till after Thursday, then it's going to be $25 in the processing fee, but still, it's going to go to zero. I've got the code set up so that it's good through April till May 1st. I really want to encourage everyone to register by then because we have to order shirts and prepare in a way that we do some guesstimates. And it's really helpful. The more that we have before we get too close, the better we can do on our shirts and everything else. So if you have any problems with this, just let me know. For everyone who hasn't registered through Run for God, or your friends and your family, if they register before midnight Thursday, it is $20. That's a huge family-friendly, best in the triad 5K price. Starting April 1st, we go to the more normal triad 5K price, $25 for the month of April. And then starting May 1st, it's $30. Race weekend, Friday, Saturday, it's $35. So now's the time to share if you're interested in doing the early bird. Yes, all right, good. So I'll get you guys up here after we're done. Next week, you guys are gonna become Hebrew scholars, and we're gonna look at Psalms and have March Madness, part 2. And I think I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about City Lights and the race website and some other things there, but we'll talk. Any questions that would help the group? Hey, thanks for coming out. We're halfway done. We're halfway there. Stay at it, and thank you for supporting City Lights. Again, share that news about the matching donations and sponsorships and all that. Let me close this with prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank you for tonight. We thank you for protecting us and watching over us, and we thank you for time in your word. We thank you, Lord, that you would inspire your servant, Solomon, to share your words of wisdom, Lord, through him. And we pray that we would use them, that they would be insightful to us, that we could apply them in our lives in order that we would, first and foremost, honor you and please you in all that we do. Be with us, watch our words and our thoughts and our attitudes, and just bring us back together next Monday night. We ask this in your name. Amen.